Dear participants, good evening. I guess we should start. Um, there might be some other people, we will let them join. So today we have the third lecture within our International Academic Mobility Program. And today our lecturer is Milos Tumpach. I would like to introduce him. Milos, could you please turn on your camera so we can hear you and see you?
Yeah, hopefully it's correct right now because I have problems right now, just a few minutes before my attempt to have a lecture. But
Oh, but
thanks.
yeah, right now it functions perfectly. So let me introduce you Milos Tumpach, who is our lecturer today. He is our colleague from University of Economics in Bratislava. He is in charge of accounting and auditing department. He is a very good friend of mine. We have many common projects and we apply for many projects. And I hope in future we'll have much more, many papers, common conferences. Also, Milos holds a membership in many international professional bodies, such as Slovak Chamber of Certified Accountants. Milos is member of the board. He is also holds the membership in Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, and also included in the editorial board of several economic journals, and specifically in the field, in the scope of our accounting and auditing and taxation topics. So I give my words to Milos Tumpach, and today he will present us his piece of useful information that will be absolutely useful for writing papers in auditing, accounting, and taxation. So, Milos, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Julia. It's always full of optimism. So, did I? So, for the first, the topics of my presentation as of today is use of databases in accounting research, because obviously, apart from various topics or just few topics, you need to have an extensive data. Yeah, the research should be made on a many information, just not like it was in previous or in the past, just on a few companies. You need to process the data for, let's say, several thousands or even more companies. So I would like to present two databases which are available for the academic research. The first one is from Slovakia. It's free of charge, and at least some portion of it are in English. The second one is commercially available, but from the point of view of the public universities, it's not a first choice because of the cost of this of the access to the database. So hopefully, what I would try to start with the presentation. So the content would be focused on two databases, even though you can see the four of them presented. So the first one is public register of the financial statements here in Slovakia. So it's roughly almost all accounting entities presents their financial statements there. Well, in fact, it's every accounting entity, but some of them are not in the public part of the register. The second one, which I was planning to introduce you to, was a database of the fillings from the Securities and Exchange Commission in United States. So there are just a few companies. Well, it's not few companies. It's several hundred, if not thousand companies, which are listed in securities markets in United States. And in accordance with the law, they need to present their quarterly and annual fillings to this database. It's also publicly available, free of charge. You can use it. But the problem is that the data is not in the same format, even though that they are using the US GAAP accounting rules. and international financial reporting standards for the cross-border emittance. But the problem is that it's not just the financial statement, it's the annual report. And even though the information is presented, sometimes you need to find it because it's cross-linked in several documents. But still, it's a huge source of the information from the international financial or the practice in international financial reporting standards, because many companies, especially from the Europe, which are enlisted in American securities markets, provided their financial statements and annual reports in accordance with IFRS rather than in accordance with the US GAAP. But I will not cover this today, probably sometimes later when the workshop will have some continuations. I would rather turn your attention to another database, which is quite comprehensive one. It's Orbis. The producer of this is Bureau van Dijk, which is a Netherlands-based company, and they used to provide the databases like Amadeus, Orbis, and it depends on the amount of data you need to process. So I have picked up the Orbis Europe because I have access to this, and also it's a point of interest from all of you. So it's probably even from people from Slovakia, from Ukraine, from Turkey, from Poland. So this is the main interest of them. Another one, the last one, which I was planning, but I wasn't successful to complete it. It's the PitchBook, which is kind of analysis database with a very precise and very rigid information about the companies. But it's much more used for the if you want to trade with securities. So this is the must for the companies. For the universities, it's used if you want to learn to teach your students how to analyze the financial data. But the problem is also the excessive cost, which is kind of prohibitive in our countries. So I will go just to another slide, and it's the register of the financial statements in Slovakia. So it has been introduced several years ago. In fact, it's pretty old from the point of view of today, but it was kind of revolution in the dissemination of information about the financial statements in Slovakia. Up until then, there were just like 1,000, 2,000 companies which have been providing their information publicly, and it was in the scanned form. So it was just like a PDF version of something which was scanned, sometimes with much and sometimes with less success. And the problem was that you need to transfer it into electronic documents. Once again, it takes you much more time, cost, and probably some errors will have been arisen during this process. So now the public register contains the financial statements from roughly 150,000 companies. It's probably a little higher amount per each year. And so if you take the amount of data back from 2015 or even from previous period, you have a pretty excessive set of data and pretty comprehensive one. But once again, I will cover it a little later, but hopefully today. So almost all of these financial statements are publicly available. There are some exceptions like branches from foreign banks, insurance companies, and obviously some financial statements which are related to securities agency, defense, and so forth. But for the commercial companies, it's open, it's free of charge, and they even have the API which allows you a mass download. So if you are a programmer or you have a proper software, it's easy to download all of this data, once again, free of charge. But the problem is that in academia and also in the practice, the people are not all people are skillful software specialists. So we at the university are using indirect approach by the data from a provider, which is called Finstat, which is one of the providers. And the Finstat takes the data from the register and provides them in the form of Excel files. So it's uh, much more comfortable for us to have such data already gathered rather than we need to pick them down through some software emulations and so forth. So uh, I will continue with the content of the public register. So you can see the interface, which is now in English. It's provided both in English and in Slovak. So obviously, I choose the English version because it would be much more convenient for you. I hope so. Now you can see uh, in this interface that you can check accounting entities, financial statements, annual reports. For the financial statements, as you can see on the lower portion of the video, you can see also the possibility to check the consolidated financial statements. So it's here and it's also here. So you can check only the companies which have both the individual or separate and consolidated financial statements, or you can choose just the companies which are providing the individual financial statements. So this is just the numbers for selection the proper accounting entity. You can have a region in Slovakia, also the district, also the size. The size probably it's kind of problem because it's not validated. So it depends on the information provided by the accounting entities. And sometimes you can't rely on it because you can see pretty huge businesses and they claim they have like 4 or 5 people or even less. For the legal form, once again, if you want to have an analysis or you have a research based on several types of the companies, like you want to have research of the accounting practice, but just only for joint stock companies, so you just select the legal form. And obviously, you can also pick up or select or choose the year, the annual period, which is covered in the financial statements. And finally, there is also ESCANI, so which is a code for industry. Alas, it's not an easy way how to present companies or how to pick up the SKNAC code in case there is a company which is conducted its business in several industries. So sometimes it's a problem. Quite recently, I was making a research which was focused on accounting firms, that is the firms or companies which are providing accounting services. And I found a company which is solely an accountant and provides relating services, but their code was like producer and seller of machinery. So completely out of the accounting range of the financial reporting. So you need to take it with a bit of distrust, just for this one. Now, probably I could go back. So I just pick up the name of the company, which is one of the largest companies in Slovakia. It's called Slovnaft, and it's focusing on refinery and producing of oil and gas and so forth. So what do we have in this register if you want to, let's say, make research for the Slovak companies, and probably it's also available in other countries. So I just picked up because the name is quite popular, as you can see. So I just picked up Solvnot ASAC, which means joint stock companies. So it's just the identification numbers, the code of the industry, legal form, and city, means the heading of the company or the headquarters of the company. Now we can continue a little more detailed information. So you can see the identification once again, the address, the proper address, now the legal form, the size of employees, so it's just 2000, 3000, and also the date of establishment. So it's just the identification for the company. But from our point of interest, we would focus much more on the financial statements rather than just on the legal forms. So what we do have from the point of view of financial statements with regards to this company. So you can see these are also individual financial statements as well as consolidated financial statements. So you can pick up what you want to have a research or analysis for. Now, if you have an additional interest in annual reports, you can see annual reports as well. If the company is providing it, that is either it's providing it on a legal base, or it's because they want to provide it to the users. Not all companies are providing annual reports in Slovakia. And the same applies also, obviously, for consolidated financial statements. So let's say you want to see the last consolidated financial statements which have been presented or which is dislodged in the register of the financial statements. So you can see from 2016, 17, 18, so the last one is from 2019. You can see on what precise date it has been submitted to the register. There is also date which relates when it has been prepared and when it has been approved, or let's say by the General Assembly or the shareholders. And this is also important part, because if you can see that the date of the audit, it also means that the company is audited. Unfortunately, you can't see such kind of information before on the general search criteria. So it is a help for you. So you can see, well, so if it has been audited on 10th of June 2020, obviously there will be some auditors. And you can see it's also here. So you can click on this. I'm providing this in PowerPoint just for the case the web will not be working. But in the live example, it would be, you can click on this and you can download the financial statements. Or you can click on this and you can download the auditor's report with the name of the auditor and the rest of his report. The last part is the statement of selected information, and this statement is used because there is no single way of presenting information in in financial statements as provided in accordance with IFRS. So the names of the line items are different. There are different headings, different subheadings. So in order for the government officials to cope with this type of information, so the Ministry of Finance has prepared a requirement that they need to put their data in the form which is used as a pre-selected form to be filled in. So you need to transfer the data from the IFRS financial statements into this Slovak statement of selected information, which is used mainly by the government. Additional note, probably worth mentioning, is that This is the company which is used IFRS. Not all of the Slovak companies are following IFRS in their preparation of or the compilation of financial statements, just a few of them. Uh, in my research, I have trying to compile the list, and it was like 150 through 160 for both the individual financial statements and 150 for consolidated financial statements. Some of the companies which are preparing their consolidated financial statements in accordance with IFRS are preparing their individual financial statements in accordance with the national accounting regulation. So you can see this data. Probably from the point of view of your interest, uh, many, if not most, of these financial statements are prepared in just in Slovak language. Some of them are prepared in both languages, in Slovak and in English. And I just came across like two or three of them which have been prepared just only in English language, which kinds of contradicts the law. So if I had clicked on the financial statements, that is, it was the heading IFRS financial statements. So let's say I click on this, and there is another window which provides me an opportunity to download the PDF file. So it's the financial statements prepared in accordance with IFRS. It's in PDF file, so it's not something like the Excel file or the CSV file or anything which is directly analyzable, processable in Excel. So you need to pick it up and then to process it into Excel form. Sometimes it's an easy way, sometimes it's not. I came across to one company which has pretty, I will use pretty bad scan of this annual report. So because some of them are using the approach like rather than printing their Word files directly into PDF, they are using indirect approach. So they are printing their Word files, then scan it, and then sending it as an electronic format. And sometimes with rather bad quality, if I can say the word quality at all. Now for the Slovak, so this was the prepare of the financial information in accordance with the IFRS. And because of these IFRS rules, you can see just the PDF file. So these are notes, all of the statements required by International Accounting Standard 1 and other standards, obviously. But there are no some additional capabilities of this register. They just provide you a way of how to download a PDF form of the financial statements, the whole set. Now, for the domestic preparers, which are compiling the financial statements in accordance with the national legislation, there is quite a different game. So you can see for the Tescoma, these are individual financial statements and annual reports. For the consolidated financial statements, these are prepared exclusively in accordance with IFRS. But there was no reason for this company to provide consolidated financial statements because of the absence of the subsidiaries and so forth. Now you can see there is no mentioning of IFRS, obviously, because this is the form for the financial statements as declared or established by the Ministry of Finance. Now this is the information about the date of approval of financial statements, and once again, auditor's report. I need to refer to the requirements of the law. Not all of the companies have to have their reports audited, just the largest ones. But we will continue talking about much more about the capabilities and I try to mention that it's a structured form of information. So it's not provided just in the PDF file or PDF form. It's provided also in other ways of information. So let's see. You can see there is a document with in a doc format, PDF, and also Excel file. So you have already prepared the Excel file with the statements, so which is pretty convenient for you, doesn't it? And in addition, you can see also on the title page uh, every necessary information like, well, whether it's big or small company or the micro accounting entity, which period has been covered by the annual by the financial statements, and there are some other informations. But from the point of interest of financial analytics, these are information about the assets, liabilities, and equity. So you have covered the balance sheet or the statement of financial position, and you have also income statement. So we can see what kind of information is provided in these headings. So you can see assets, everything, every line item is translated into English. And you have also information about the current accounting period and uh, preceding accounting periods. So you have like non-current assets, corrections means accumulated depreciation and amortization plus any impairment allowances, and net means the gross amount minus impairment in the form of accumulated depreciation or amortization or impairment allowances. This is just the net information. So you can see any line item in this part for the assets. Obviously, the same applies for the liabilities and equity. And I can show you the information which is provided in the income statement. So you can see actual data for the current accounting period and immediately preceding accounting period, just to make a comparison. In Slovakia, you have prescribed form of presenting the data for the if you compile your financial statements in accordance with the national law rather than in accordance with IFRS. So there are no additional accounting periods, and there is a structure and the order of the line items to be presented. So you can see, you can compare it among the industry, and if you are pretty familiar with one income statement, you are pretty familiar with all of these financial statements. At the end, in the brackets, you can see the 3 digits number, and it's a reference to the accounts. So let's say in the accounting book I have, in the general ledger, I have account 604, which is focused on the revenues from the sales of merchandise. And this is the for the retail industry. And also, if you are producer of goods, so you have account 601, which is used for the revenues from the sale of self-manufactured goods. And this is to be presented on this line item. Now, I was thinking to provide you much detailed information about the Orbis Europe. Probably many of you are already familiar with it, but I was considering the usability of this presentation. So probably not all of you are interested in the data of Slovak companies. So probably you will be much more interested in the overall data provided for the whole Europe. So once again, as I already mentioned, that it's commercially available, but for the public universities, especially for the public universities, the price might be somewhat prohibitive. So when I was discussing it with people from the Orbis, it was like 30 up to 40,000 as an annual subscription. So if you are a large university and if you join your funds, so it's an easy way. But if you can't join the funds, it's probably almost impossible to get an access. Now, what they claim that there are some different databases like the Orbis Global, which is for the world, and it covers. They claim that it covers like 400 million companies. For the Europe, and there was a claim that it contains like 100 million companies, but as you can see a little further, I was able to locate just 75 million records of the European companies. But still, it's a pretty huge amount of information to be processed, analyzed, and on which you can base your hypothesis and analysis and results, rather than just on a bunch of few companies. Having such amount of data, the paramount criteria for using it are search capabilities. So if you can't search it, you end up with 75 million records, and it's virtually impossible to process it in any meaningful form. So the rest of this presentation will be focused much more on the pretty impressive search capabilities of this database. So I will start with the first slide, and I hope that you don't lose your connection because I can see only my presentation, just to be sure that you are on the line like me. So you can see the first page of this database, and it's focused on the general search capabilities. Like you can pick your search criteria based on companies or on the locations or the industries or anything else. So speaking about the companies, so these are like identifications, the types of the companies, the legal forms, and so forth. Also the location, obviously, you can pick up whether you want information, let's say, from Slovakia or from Germany or France, or you can choose several countries or all countries which are covered by this data in this database. For the industries and activities, well, it's based on some kind of endemic selection of the data. So they have various criteria, various classifications of industries, but they are pretty detailed. And also there are some information about directors, managers, and advisors, ownerships, mergers, acquisitions, and so forth. You can find even personal information, rather personal, and I think even confidential information about the chairmen and the persons associated with some companies. So let's think that you start with the company. So you want to make your selection process starting with the company. So what you can see is the company name. Obviously, you can start with it like I did it before. Like I put the name Slovnaft, and I end up with the financial records. Now the status, standardized legal form, because the legal forms could differ in Europe across the countries. Now national legal forms, so obviously some of these are rather endemic. Let's say the legal forms which are in Slovakia are probably not quite the same like the legal companies or legal form of companies in Ukraine. There may be some overlapping legal forms, but some of them are different. And the legal events, number of employees, information, year of corporation, size classification, and so forth. So we can go a little to a next level, to a much more detailed level. So let's say legal forms. So for the Ukraine, and I'm not pretty sure whether they are correct or not, but they are providing these types of companies. It just start because obviously the companies, the legal forms, it's not finished with uh, the character C, so it's just the start. So agricultural companies, associations, and so association of citizenry unions, legal persons. So they are provided quite a lot of information. And as you can see, previously I picked up Ukraine as an example, also the Turkey, Slovakia, and Poland. So I can combine the information from various countries, and obviously the result will be combined from these countries. So it is extremely useful if you want to make some kind of comparison, because if you want to publish something in the peer-reviewed journals, uh, it has to be based on at least two or three countries. Well, if I want to write something about the accounting practice in Slovakia, it would be word of interest for the people in Slovakia. I hope so. But it's much more interesting if I compare it like countries which are neighboring countries and countries which are not neighboring countries, because you can differentiate the reasons or the culprits of the things which has happened in the business practice. For the legal events, especially if you want to make an analysis like on bankruptcies or some kind of financial distress, it's extremely useful. So you can see the registration based on the date, change of articles, extremely important in case if you want to make an article of how the change of articles has an impact, if any, let's say on the market value. Now the changes in management, changes in ownership. Now the auditor, who is the auditor of the company, or you can pick up like the auditor, like you want to pick up all the companies which has been audited in, let's say, Ukraine, Turkey, Poland, and Slovakia by EY. Who is the banking institution? And also you can pick up, which is paramount importance for us, financials like key data from financial statements, agreement, licenses, certificates, reorganization, default, and termination. So once again, if you want to provide your or based your research on financial distress, so you just pick the appropriate category out of these three or all of them. For the management, it's empowerment, name change, change in position, termination, and another change. Or for the auditor, appointment, dismission, exempt from audit. So you can see, you can pick up all companies which are exempt from audit. You can pick up all companies which has their auditor dismissed, and you can pick up the companies for which there have been some other changes or important things relating to the auditor. Now, for the financials, as I already mentioned, this is the paramount importance from the point of view of accountants, and relates also to academics, which are making their research in the domain of accounting or financial reporting. So let's say annual report filing overdue, so it's not completed at the time, revocation, so there have been some changes. Statement filling, so it's based on the date, number of employees, now non-compliant, once again extremely useful if you want to make an analysis on some anomalies, some irregularities, or some kind of events which are outside the ordinary business practice. Now, for the activities and industry, so you can select BYD, which means Bureau van Dijk, which is the producer of this database. And just for the brief illustration, so let's say they started with the NACE revision 2 main sectors, so agriculture, mining, extraction, utilities, construction. So you can pick up any kind, and because of this plus sign, it means that you can also have a more detailed classification of these activities and industries. Financials, so you can see key financials and employees. Now the global detailed, global standard format, global ratios, account type, accounting practice. So you can pick whether those companies which are providing their information in accordance with IFRS, let's say, or with GAAP, with US GAAP, you can provide or select the companies with a specific amount or specific value of liquidity ratio or specific amount of return on investment ratio. So just for your impression, so let's say you picked net sales from the profit or loss account as a variable, and you can in the next step you can select the value or the time period, or you can combine it in both. These are the general information, so the most important information. There are not so much. They are not going to so much of detail to like to the line items of the income statement, from the obvious reasons, or because of the obvious reasons, because it can't be compared. You can compare total revenues across the countries, but you can't compare, let's say, the information provided by account like in Slovakia 604, because not all countries are using the same format or type of the information, or even if so, they are not using the same measurement basis. So let's say I have picked up the net sales. In the next step, I will choose the values. So the net sales, I can use the value, so like minimum or the maximum. So let's say I will pick up all of these companies which have the net sales at a minimum 100,000 and at the maximum 20 million. So all of others have been filtered out. Or growth rate. So you can say, well, I would like to know which companies have a minimum growth rate at 50% and without any maximum. Or rate of decline, obviously, because it's the same like the growth rate, but other way. Companies with a positive trend, with a negative trend, and all companies with a known value. So it's not, it's unfiltered information. Now for the another financials, so let's say I will pick up for the corporate, not for the bank or the insurance companies, but for the corporate, the structure ratios. So what they understand for the structure ratios is current ratio, liquidity ratio, shareholders liquidity ratio, solvency ratio. So you will be able to compute it on your own, but the information is already prepared and available for you in the database. So if you pick up solvency ratio, okay, so it will compute. Let's say if you want to pick up or to have an analysis of the solvency ratio for the companies in the medicine since 2020, and from Slovakia, Germany, and France. So we just picked Slovakia, Germany, France. Just pick the industry, you select your appropriate structure ratio, and you end up with enough information. Now you have been also provided with the possibility to select a type of account. So consolidated, for which there are no individual financial statements, or um, consolidated and unconsolidated, and these are the individual financial statements. So if it starts with U, these are the individual financial statements. It's if it starts with C, it's the consolidated financial statements. Also select if you have the company with limited financial data or without financial data. So let's say if you want to see the amount of errors in the fillings, well, so if there are companies without non-financial data, so there are some kind of dormant companies. And if there are with limited financial data, so you need to know about them just to be sure that your analysis have been based on the proper data for all companies which are relevant. Accounting practice. Now, this is kind of interesting because you can see these are fully compliant with IFRS, so financial statements prepared in accordance with the IFRS. Now, this is with IFRS, but with certain exemptions, and with local national accounting regulations. So it's in every country, and as in accordance with the US-based generally accepted accounting principles. So if you want to see how many companies across the Europe are using the US GAAP, it just probably it's not precise information, but you can have a general impression of how many of companies are currently presented their financial statements in accordance with the US GAAP in Europe. And also, if you want to make an analysis of the practice in accordance with IFRS, so naturally, quite naturally, you will pick up this selection criteria. So let's say that I have been trying to pick up information about the companies which are providing their financial statements in accordance with IFRS, and then I will try to filter out only those companies which are based or have their headquarters in Slovakia. And out of these, I would like to pick only those which are conducting their businesses in sector of chemicals, petroleum, rubber, and plastic. So the total companies or the total information are 75 million companies in the Orbis Europe database, so 75 million companies. Now, in accordance with IFRS, only it's not probably the correct word, but it's 500,000 companies, 560,000. Well, these are confirmed companies. Probably there are some companies which are preparing their financial statements in accordance with IFRS, but these are not included in the database. But as a starting point, it's the amount which is not less than 560,000. Now, out of these 560,000, I picked just the companies which are located in Slovakia, and you can see not all of these companies are presented because, as I already mentioned, it's just like 150 or 160 for the individual financial statements, while you can see just 84 for them. But the problem is that probably if you tweak with the search criteria during the process, you will probably earn a much higher amount. But with these basic settings, it just 84 companies, which is just half of real or actual compares of the financial statements in accordance with IFRS in Slovakia. Now, in the sector of chemicals, petroleum, rubber, and plastic, there are just 4 of them in Slovakia following IFRS. And you can see the results. So it's a Slovnaft, Chemilak, Zentiva, and Plastica. As you can see, and there is the code for the industry. Now, it means this code, like whether they have consolidated and unconsolidated information. So for this, they have also consolidated information. And for the Zentiva, it's just the unconsolidated information. For the flags, yeah, there are some informations about the process of preparation, as I assume. For this, I'm not quite sure. I checked it yesterday just to be sure, but now I completely forgot it. But so probably the next time I will provide you with some explanation for these flags. And going back to the detailed information. So let's say I was on the Slovnaft and I want to know something about this company. So I just click on it and I will find the information about this address, legal form, date of incorporation, now the brief overview of the financial results and the financial performance. So just for the year 2019, because it's based on the financial statements, and as you probably remember from the beginning of this presentation, we have been covering the same company with the National Register of the Financial Statement, and the last date or last period covered with this register was 2019. So obviously, the Bureau van Dijk wasn't able to provide more actual data because the last one was from the year 2019. And if you want more detailed information, so let's say you want to have an information in a brief form for the key performance indicators. So for the same company, just clicking on it, you can see exchange rate, that is in which currency it has been reported. So locally it's a euro, but Bureau van Dijk is normalizing it and using the US dollars. So you can see information from the current period, which means 2019 from that perspective, immediately preceding period. And there are also information from periods before. So unlike the Slovak register, you can see the pretty structured data, and you can see information for even for 5 years, not just 2 of them. Well, it's just the selected information, it's not all of them. So you can see operating revenue, profit and loss before tax, profit and loss for the period, so after the tax, cash flows, total assets, extremely important for the measuring of accruals. So if you want to know whether there are some management earnings, so you can see the cash flows and you can compare it with the profit or loss. Obviously, there are some accruals and you can analyze it whether there is some dependence on the amount of accruals and bad years or accruals and good years. Now, the basic, most elementary financial ratios and the number of employees. Well, for this one, I won't rely on this because, well, number of employees is well, it's stated by the company, but not all of the company have such precise information. They should have, but sometimes they have some kind of misleading information. Well, probably it's not. It not relates to the Slovenian company, but I can provide you with some examples for which the data provided in financial statements are not true. And we can go for even more detailed information. I'm pretty sure that we are following or we are heading to the very end of my presentation. So this is last but one slide, as I remember. So, or probably it's even the last one. So I just pick up the chairman of this Slovnev company. I won't provide you with the name. Well, you can see it in the newspaper. It's not confidential information, but the birth date, I am not quite sure whether it's confidential information or not. Well, obviously, if the Bureau of Funding has such information, it has been published somewhere, so you can see the name, his birth date, even his nationality, his home address, and the contact ID. Contact ID is not probably not so much useful, but you have a direct link to LinkedIn just to know something much more about him, or to get in contact with him. And you can see also that the chairman has some kind of interest in 15 companies, and for which he serves as the chairman of the board, general director for this is the agricultural cooperative in a pretty small village. So it's one of the largest businesses in Slovakia, and it's agricultural cooperative in a small village, and he serves there also as the chairman of the board. But probably it's because of his family ties to this village. So I think that it's the last part of this presentation, except for any questions you probably might have or are willing to share with us. So I just stopped the sharing, and if you have any questions, though, I will be more delighted to answer you if I am in possession of the correct answer, that is.
Well, I would like to thank you for your presentation, because it's very important to provide really background empirical data, because theory is theory, but when you prove it with figures, it really makes your research deeper and more profound. So thank you for a very useful piece of information. And if there are any questions from the audience, please, you are welcome to ask your questions. So I guess no questions. So thank you very much for your presentation. And I guess that with this, we will end our session for today. And we'll thank you, Milos, one more time for his presentation and for the information. And we have one more lecture, the last one, which we have next week. And after that, we'll send all our participants the assignment, and we'll write it in detail, so you will definitely know what to do. So for today, I would like to thank you all the participants and our lecturer, and see you next week.
And I would like to present my thankfulness to Julia because of her idea of making this workshop live and working. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Goodbye to all of our participants.
Goodbye.
Thank you.